Hi everybody, today's lecture is on primate grouping patterns. Primate grouping patterns are based on primate social organization, and there are three primary elements of primate social organization: the social system, the spacing system, and the mating system. The social system includes behavior and the relationships within the group. Okay, it's much easier to describe for group living organisms. The mating system describes reproductive interactions between individuals, can only be properly inferred by true paternity testing, and hints about the mating system can generally be inferred indirectly from body size and from testis size. It's basically there's a relationship between body size and testis size and mating system. And then the third one in the center here is the spacing system. The spacing system describes the socio-temporal distribution of individuals. It sheds light on the relationships within and between the sexes and how many males have access to females and vice versa. It has been suggested that different patterns of social organization arise as a consequence of differences in female distribution, and that the following factors that are responsible for differences in female distribution. One is the extent to which paternal care by the father, can increase female reproductive success. So if female reproductive success is dependent on paternal care, female distribution will be affected by male distribution because they need these males to provide care for the offspring. We also see that the size of the female home range is also an important determinant of female distribution. The size and stability of female groups is another determinant of differences in female distribution, and also the density and distribution of females is also an important component of social organization. Different patterns of social organization are also linked to different forms of what we call mate guarding. Mate guarding is the ways that individuals guard their spouses, their mates. There are two primary types of mate guarding. The first is female defense and the second is resource defense. Female defense mate guarding involves males who compete for females, and they defend individual females or female groups. So the males, the spouses, the mates are actually defending their spouses from other individuals who may try to mate with them. We also have what's called resource defense, where males defend feeding or mating territories within the female range. So the males are defending resources, effectively, that the females need to survive and reproduce successfully. So they're not defending the females per se as much as the resources that the females require. And each of these results in very different patterns of social organization. Within mammals and primates, there are a variety of different patterns of social organization. There are 5 main types that I'm going to be talking about today. The first is monogamy, the second is polyandry, the third is multi-male, multi-female, a type of polygamy. We have dispersed, which is noyau, and we have polygyny, which is single male, multi-female. Single male, multi-female, distinct from multi-male, multi-female. Notice these words are a little bit similar. The main difference is polygamy has multiple males, polygyny only a single male. Okay. Monogamy. Let's go through each of these. In monogamy, a monogamous social structure consists of one adult female, one adult male, and their immature offspring. The ranges of the male and female are not just coinciding, but demonstrate a close, permanent spatial association between males and females. That is, the males and the females travel around together and are regularly seen together. They're not just in different parts of their territory, they travel and feed and do things together. In non-human primates that exhibit monogamy, they generally mate for life. So they have very long-term relationships. They are not, oh, I'll mate with this female this year and this another female next year. It's not serial monogamy as we often see in humans, but it's long-term monogamy. There are a variety of behavioral characteristics that are exhibited by the majority of monogamous primates. These are things like vocal duetting, paternal care, territoriality, and a lack of sexual dimorphism. And I'm going to go through each of these individually. Vocal duetting involves early morning vocal calls by the female and the male to establish their mated status and perhaps to defend their territory. These are really loud calls that usually go on for several minutes, and they can be heard from quite a distance. The calls are given in the early morning because this is when vocal calls can be transmitted the clearest and the furthest through the forest canopy. Another behavioral characteristic of monogamous primates is paternal care. Paternal care is care provided by the father to the infants. I want to point out that paternal care is exceptionally rare in mammals. That is, in most mammals, females provide the care. Females gestate their offspring, they lactate their offspring, and after lactation, the females continue to provide the care. So it's very, very rare to have paternal care, but we do see it regularly with monogamous primates. The care provided by fathers to infants include things like infant carriage, carrying the infant around, protecting the infant from predators, defending the territory, as well as food sharing. Male care, for male care to evolve in a given species, the benefits to the offspring need to be weighed against the probability that the male could mate again. Should he provide his time and energy towards mating with another female and maybe producing new offspring, or should he provide care for this offspring that he knows is his? Okay. One condition that is generally needed for male care to evolve is what we call paternity certainty. That is, the males need to be certain that the offspring they care for is their own. Okay, so as a result, paternal care is predominantly found in monogamous species because in these species, in monogamous species, males can monitor the behavior of females and ensure paternity certainty, and they can prevent cuckoldry. In a polygynous species, the female mates with multiple males, so the male is not certain that the offspring is in fact his, and so he'd be less likely to provide care for that offspring and be better off spending time finding another mate. For most primates, paternal care generally involves transporting the infants. I want to mention that this is an exceptionally costly behavior. It's energetically costly. In one species, such as lemur rubervenner from Madagascar, and tamarins, this is a picture of a golden lion tamarin, twinning is common. So the female generally produces twin offspring. And so the father is then responsible for carrying two offspring. And these offspring at birth generally weigh 20% of adult weight at birth. If you're carrying two infants, that's 40% of his own weight at birth. So this is a very, very hefty load, and it makes it very, very expensive for these males to provide this care. You don't want to expend all this energy transporting these infants around if they're not your own. And remember, these infants are growing, and these fathers are carrying these infants for several months. So you really want to know that that they are in fact your own. In tamarins, the males not only carry the infants, which weigh 40% of his own weight at birth, but they also share food, insects, with their infants. Food sharing is a very rare behavior in the order Primates, and the tamarins are a notable exception. And imagine how costly it is, again, for these fathers to go out with infants on your back, going around trying to capture insects, and then instead of consuming them himself, gives them to his offspring. very costly behavior. A third behavioral characteristic of monogamous primates is what we call territoriality. Territoriality is the active defense of a resource space. In other words, individuals actively defend their territory, their space, from other individuals of the same species who may want to intrude and use the resources within that area. The resources within these territories that individuals often fight about include opposite-sexed individuals, potential mates, as well as food. Defenses that are generally displayed in terms of territoriality include morning vocal duets, daily treks along the territory boundary, this is very common in, say, chimpanzees, and threats to intruders. There's often intense territorial competition between adjacent groups of primates. The competition is generally referred to as intersexual competition. It's intersexual because males are repelling males and females are often repelling females. The antagonism to members of the same sex often even extends to adult offspring of the same sex. For example, resident males will often exhibit intense agonistic behavior towards their sons, while adult females will display intense agonistic behavior towards their daughters. They're usually very antagonistic towards them, and they prevent them from foraging in high-quality areas. They generally forces the offspring to disperse to a different territory, a different area, and often this antagonism results in physical aggression, biting, chasing, and can be very, very intense. The fourth characteristic of all monogamous primates is that they do not exhibit sexual dimorphism. Sexual dimorphism is differences in body size between males and females. In monogamous primates, males and females are traditionally the same size. There are two primary types of monogamy: obligate monogamy and facultative monogamy. Obligate monogamy occurs when the males are obligated or forced to be monogamous because of the stringent requirements for male parental care. That is, if the males do not provide parental care to the offspring, the infants will die. The infants will not survive. We also have obligate monogamy resulting sometimes because of the low density and dispersion of females. If the females are dispersed in such a way that males can only guard one female at a time, obligate monogamy results. Facultative monogamy occurs when females are abundant in their distribution and/or the stringent requirements for male parental care are decreased. In these situations, males will not be monogamous and they become polygynous. So basically, monogamy is artificially enforced in these situations. The females guard the males and the males guard the females. A classic example of a monogamous primate is a species known as Hylobates lar. These are commonly called the white-handed gibbons. As I said, they are monogamous. A typical social group contains an adult male, adult female, and up to 4 offspring. Each is approximately 2 years apart in age, so every 2 years the female gives birth to another offspring. The males and females are what we say co-dominant. That is, males and females are equally dominant. These pairs stay together for long periods of time. They are known to stay together for decades. They produce as many as 10 offspring together. Each family occupies and defends its own territory, and they use loud morning calls to reinforce distance between groups. the relationships between groups, between different groups of Hylobates lar of these white-handed gibbons are very hostile. So neighboring groups are not friendly with one another. They are very, very hostile. When offspring reach maturity, and this is usually between 8 and 10 years of age, they usually leave their family territory to seek a mate. And their parents generally encourage departure of their offspring through a ton of aggressive interactions, chasing, biting, just not letting their offspring consume food. And so they're very, very aggressive. There was a very interesting study by John Mittani, who studied the responses of mated gibbons to the songs of solitary gibbons, gibbons that did not have a mate. And when the songs of the female strangers were played back from the center of the group's range, the females, the mated female, generally reacted very, very aggressively by beginning duets while leading their group to the site of the played back vocalization. So the females reacted aggressively to female strangers. They usually begin duets, and they led their family to the site of the playback. What happened with the males? Well, if the male was the first one to hear the response of the solitary female, they led a very silent and quiet approach to this vocalization. The reverse was also true. The males would react aggressively to male strangers. They began duets and led the family to the side of the playback. And when it was a strange male, if a female was alone when she heard it, she would lead silent approaches to that male's vocalizations. Mittani concluded that gibbons are forced into accepting monogamy by the range defense of adult females, that females are preventing other females from entering their territories. They are guarding their mates. If the gibbons were not guarded by their mates, they would mate with strangers. Additional support for this recently was shown to be the case for siamangs and one gibbon species. Ryan Plombett reported that a female siamang mated with 3 males from a neighboring group. And Richard reported extra pair copulations in Hylobates lar. And he noted that 10% of all copulations in this monogamous species were extra pair copulations, copulations with individuals that were not your mate. So they're monogamous and they have long-term relationships, but they do cheat on their mates. The second type of social organization that primates exhibit is known as polyandry. In polyandrous groups, excuse me, there are more males than there are females. Usually there are 2 males with a single female, sometimes as many as 3 males. All group members care for the young and provide food for the lactating female. I want to make it very clear that this type of social organization is very, very rare. Less than 1% of all mammals exhibit polyandry. One group that is characterized by polyandry are the tamarins and marmosets. The major benefit of tolerating additional males is help in raising your offspring. With tamarins and marmosets, litter mass, the weight of the offspring when they are born, is very high relative to maternal body mass. So the weight of the offspring is very heavy compared to the weight of the female. And what this means is that it's very costly to produce twins, to produce 2 offspring. There was an interesting study by Goldison, who did a study of wild saddleback tamarins. And she found that male-female pair is literally unable to successfully raise twins by themselves. So if you have just mom and dad and they produce twins, the mortality rate would be 100%. So none of the offspring will survive in a monogamous pair. She found that male-female pairs that have 1 adult offspring or an additional male in the group have a 70% infant survival rate. So 70% of the offspring survive if there's an additional individual to help care for the offspring. Male-female pair with 2 helpers had 100% infant survival. Goldison also showed that adult male cotton-top tamarins, who are the principal carriers of infants in this species, lose as much as 5% of their body mass, 5% of body weight, in the first 4 weeks of infant development. 5%, and this is in captivity, where they're being fed regularly. Imagine what it must be like in the rainforest where they actually have to forage for their food. It's going to be much greater. The third type of social organization that is exhibited by primates is polygyny. This is single male, multi-female. Single male, several females and their offspring form groups together. Adult males not living with the female bands generally form separate all-male groups, or they live solitarily. These all-male groups are generally referred to as bachelor bands or all-male bands, and effectively they represent non-reproductive groups of males. They're non-reproductive because there are no females in that group. As a result, you can imagine there's intense competition between males for access to breeding females, because there's only one male that gets the females. All the others don't. So in addition to there being intense competition between males for access to breeding females, there's also, this results in a tremendous difference in the reproductive success of these males. In some polygynous mammals, such as elephant seals, 14 to 35% of males perform all the copulations in a breeding season. What this means is that 86 to 70% of all males don't get to copulate every year. And they found that 5 of the males account for more than 50% of all copulations in these elephant seals. So there's real disparity in sexual access and in resulting reproductive success. The variance in the reproductive success of these males who participate in a polygynous social system will be reduced if each male assumes more than one role during his reproductive years. That is, if some years you're in an all-male bachelor band, and other years you're in a single-male multi-female band. If the role that you take, the type of social group you're in, changes over your lifetime, the variance in the reproductive success between males will also be reduced. One of the things that we've noticed with single male, multi-female groups is that they are characterized by frequent takeovers. Takeovers are events where males from another group, such as an all-male band, oust the resident male. They kill him, often fight him until he's near death, and they often, most importantly, kill any dependent offspring. When you kill a dependent offspring, is an offspring that is still nursing, and this is referred to as infanticide because you're killing the infants. This is very, very common in Hanuman langurs, which occur in Asia, and it's been reported at least once for every single primate species known to mankind. So it's a relatively common behavior, but it is exceptionally common in single male, multi-female species. Primate species that are characterized by polygynous social organization generally exhibit sexual dimorphism in their canine size as well as their body size. So right here, this is a female Chacma baboon. Look at this canine. It's not so big, it's sharp and pointy, but here's the male. Unituck, sharp and pointy to an extreme. Male canines are much larger than females. In this example right here, I mean, just look at the size of the male compared to the female. In gorillas, males are twice the size of females. So we're seeing, extensive variation in canine and body size in polygynous. A classic example of a polygynous primate is Cercopithecus mitis, the blue monkey. They have one male, multi-female groups, and the males are very intolerant of other males. This is a relatively common social structure for anthropoid or what you might call haplorhine primates. Polygamy. Polygamy constitutes multi-male, multi-female groupings. Yet multi-male, multi-female groups consist of many adult males and many adult females, as well as all of their offspring. The presence of several adult males often leads to tension, especially in regards to females in estrus. There are two main ways that polygamous primates generally dissipate or relieve tension. The first is sperm competition, and the second is dominance hierarchies. Sperm competition. Species in which multi-male, multi-female groups exhibit enlarged male testes relative to body size generally engage in sperm competition. So you have large testes relative to body size. Why do you need large testes? They have large testes for the production of lots of sperm so that the male can inseminate multiple females. Many males copulate with each female, and the more sperm a male produces, the greater the chances that one of his sperm is going to inseminate her one egg. In contrast, males in a monogamous social organization generally have small testes. The reason is they don't need to compete at that level to inseminate the female. They only need to give one or two sperm to get to that egg. So we see big differences with monogamous versus polygynous species in terms of testes size. Species in multi-male, multi-female groups are also likely to have very strong, detailed dominance hierarchies as a means of reducing tension. Dominance is generally measured in terms of the direction of approach-retreat interactions, so who's approaching and who retreats, as well as the direction of submissive and aggressive behaviors, who's exhibiting aggressive behaviors, who exhibits submissive behaviors in any interaction between two individuals within the group. The winner of the disputes is generally referred to as the dominant individual or the dominant animal. Among males, dominance is a function of attributes which affect performance in aggressive interactions. These include things like size, strength, and agility. Among females, the development of dominance hierarchies is best explained in a series of stages. Basically, we find that all infant females are subordinate to all adult females. Infants, however, of high-ranking females are treated differently than those of low-ranking females. Juvenile females, though, gradually transition from subordinate to dominant with regard to those to whom the mothers are dominant. Mothers then bully their subordinates into accepting their daughter as dominant, and these juveniles rarely challenge adults who rank above their mothers. Juvenile females usually assume ranks directly below their mothers. Among female siblings, younger sisters rise in rank above older sisters, and then this is because mothers support their younger offspring against their older offspring. And the main reason that moms do this is because younger offspring have more reproductive value than do older offspring. And it's also a strategy to prevent daughters from forming a coalition against the mother. So what are the benefits of dominance? Well, to begin with, there is greater access to preferred food. Isbell noted that in brown capuchins, dominance rank is directly related to disputed foods. That higher-ranking females are able to obtain greater access to preferred limited or clump foods, and they're able to feed more efficiently than lower-ranking females. Among brown capuchins, dominance rank is directly related to intake of foods that the monkeys frequently fight over. For foods that create little competition, there's no relationship between dominance rank and food intake, only for foods that are competed against. Similarly, Witten observed that when female vervet monkeys feed on desirable clumped foods like acacia flowers, the high-ranking females had higher feeding rates than did low-ranking females. These differences in dominance rank among females are reflected in differences in various components of their reproductive success. Among brown capuchins and vervet monkeys, higher-ranking females seem to have greater success in producing surviving offspring than do lower-ranking ones. And there have been numerous studies which have demonstrated positive correlations between dominance rank and age at first birth, inner birth interval, numbers of births per year, and infant survivorship. Now, there are some populations where this relationship between dominance and reproductive parameters has not been observed. For example, Packer reported that high-ranking female baboons suffer higher rates of miscarriage than lower-ranking females, resulting in lower reproductive success for higher-ranking females. So there's some controversy, but in general there's a good relationship between dominance and reproductive success. The last type of social organization that I want to mention that primates exhibit is referred to as a dispersed social organization, or a Noyau. In a dispersed or Noyau type social system, adult males and females do not form permanent mixed sex groups. They're not permanent. The males have ranges that overlap several females' ranges, and even though the two sexes do not travel regularly together, they often interact so that males can monitor the reproductive status of the females. They often communicate via olfaction, through smell. This is primarily exhibited by nocturnal strep shrines as well as orangutan populations. Okay, so what are some problems with these traditional classifications, these 5 different social organizations, social structures that are exhibited by these primates? Most importantly, not all primate species fall into one of these 5 categories. For example, Hamadryas baboons. Hamadryas baboons forage by day in single male, multi-female groups, but they aggregate by night into a single large group of hundreds of individuals in order to sleep. So the question you need to then ask is, do they constitute a single male group, because that's what they are during the day, or are they a multi-male, multi-female group, because that's what they do at night? How would you classify them? Chimpanzees, same type of problem. Adult females forage alone or with their offspring throughout the day. Adult males are frequently found in small groups. These subgroups then join together at abundant food resources. And they can also temporarily associate for other reasons. So are you going to say that they're solitary? Do you say that they have all-male bands? Or are they multi-male, multi-female as you see them at these abundant food resources? It's very hard to classify these primates as one type of social system or another, because their social system changes depending on the situation. Okay, so why are these traditional classifications problematic? Because they are based on the number of males and females in a group. But these groupings change based on the activity in progress. The grouping patterns are very flexible. So is there a better alternative? Well, most primatologists have now begun to view social structure not just as groupings of males and females, excuse me, but as the patterning of relationships between individuals, not just the groupings of males and females. Individuals decide whether or not they want to interact with other group members based on their activity. So why do primates live in groups? This is a big debate in primatology and has been for over the last 30 or so years. And most of the discussion by primatologists studying grouping patterns has focused on the relative importance of 2 benefits of group living. Excuse me, sorry. The first is the resource protection model, and the second is predation model. That is, primates live in groups to enable individuals to collectively defend access to resources, or primates live in groups to reduce an individual's vulnerability to predation. So let's talk about each of these models and data to support or reject them. The resource defense model was first developed by Richard Wrangham. Wrangham believes that group living is beneficial because it enables individuals to defend access to food resources collectively. Wrangham's model is based on the simple idea that there's power in numbers, that the larger the group, the more individuals there are to defend that resource. Larger groups can exclude smaller groups from a resource patch. Wrangham noted that the joint defense of food resources is most profitable, one, when food items are relatively valuable, when food resources are clumped in their distribution, and three, when there's enough food within the defended patch to meet the needs of several individuals. Wrangham noted that fruit meets these three requirements. Fruit is valuable because it is high in carbohydrates. It grows in discrete patches, such as trees, and it often occurs in large crops, such as in fruit trees, which permit numerous individuals to feed simultaneously. Wrangham also noted that primates preferentially feed on fruit and suggests that this observation may account for why so many primates actually live in groups, because they eat fruit. So what kind of support do we have for the resource protection model? Well, in capuchin monkeys, larger groups win a greater number of encounters over food resources than do smaller groups. For example, in over 100 encounters between groups at fruit trees, larger groups emerged as victorious, able to consume the fruit, while the smaller group was forced to leave the fruit tree and forage elsewhere. The fact that members of large groups usually defeat smaller groups in confrontations over access to food supports the resource defense model. The additional support for this resource protection model is the fact that primate groups compete with other groups over fruit, but not over insects, which are much more randomly distributed. Additional studies supporting the resource defense model comes from squirrel monkeys, Cimeri. A study of 2 species of Cimeri suggests that groups form based on changing distribution of food resources. In Cimeri orstedii, they have small groups of 4 to 5 individuals, and food is distributed in small uniform patches. In Cimeri scurrius, they have groups of 25 individuals, and food is distributed in large random patches. So basically what we see is that where food is widely distributed, such as here, okay, there's less need for group defense, and that's why they have these smaller groups. Where food is irregularly distributed in large random patches, large groups outcompete the smaller groups. There are some situations that provide some challenges to Wrangham's resource protection model. The model does not predict all primate social groupings. Mouse lemurs consume 75% fruit, but they live in a very dispersed social system. They are not group living primates, but they eat predominantly fruit. Why aren't they living in groups? Colobus monkeys eat 80% leaves. They're not eating fruit, but they still live in groups. Howler monkeys eat 90% leaves, but they too still live in groups. Spectral tarsiers eat insects, but they live in groups. There are these exceptions to this relationship that suggests that the relationship between resource defense, diet, and social organization is much more complex than Wrangham initially suggested. Carl van Schaik argues that sociality creates substantial resource competition among group members. Creates what he referred to as in-group or within-group competition or intra-group competition. Basically, individuals who live together must compete for access to the same resources, and this negates the benefit from group defense of resources, because even though you're defending those resources from other individuals, you have to now compete with your group mates for those resources. So Van Schaik argues that instead of resource defense accounting for why primates live in groups, he argues that predation is why primates live in groups. And this is the predation model. So he argues that primates form groups in order to reduce their vulnerability to predators. This is, as I noted, the main alternative to the resource defense model. There are a wide variety of predators that prey on primates: snakes, lions, birds of prey, all these different types of primates, predators. Group living is argued to be an effective means of reducing vulnerability to predation. So what kind of support do we have for the predation model? Well, Van Schaik found that on islands without predators, macaques form smaller groups than on islands with predators. Similarly, Jansen found that capuchin monkeys in small groups spend more time scanning for predators than do individuals that are in large groups. So individuals in large groups spend less time scanning for predators. And Gursky found that the mean distance between spectral tarsiers decreased by more than 50% when exposed to predator models. That is, they're becoming more and more, they're aggregating more and more, forming a group when exposed to predator models. Once again, providing some support for the idea that predation pressure is the major determinant of groupings among primates. There's one really big problem with this predation model, and that is acts of predation are rarely observed. So it's very difficult to establish whether or not there is a definitive link between predation and grouping patterns. In sum, both resource defense and predation may both influence sociality.